Hey everybody, welcome back to interview number 8 million, or if anyone's counting, you know better than I do. We just keep finding interesting people that have something to say, and we want to make sure that everybody in our network hears about it. So today is our first international call, which is kind of exciting. I think we're keeping somebody, well, maybe it's not too late, maybe it's not bedtime there. But my guests today are Suzanne Post, who you all have met before when we talked about Shear domestic violence. And just as a refresher, Suzanne is a stylist and an owner. She owns her own salon. And in 2017, she started the Shear. She partnered with the YWCA in Nashville and started the Shear domestic violence training, which now is available on Barbicide. A lot of you have done that on barbicide.com. And with us, we have from across the pond, as I think they say, Liz McKeon. Liz is a salon business expert. I was losing my words there. She's a salon business expert. She's been in the industry for over 30 years. She works with people in all different disciplines in the beauty industry. And I love that her goal, when she talks about what her goal is to see these businesses reach their full potential. Whatever it takes, she uses her 30 years of experience to help salon professionals reach their full potential. So Liz has been a huge factor in bringing the Shear domestic violence training to Europe, but mostly through Ireland, which is where we're finding you today, correct?
That's right. Yes, I'm based in Ireland, but my work takes me everywhere. Yeah.
So I'm super excited also because when I tell someone we're talking to someone from Ireland, they say, "Can you understand a word she said?" And we've had previous conversations, and yes, I'm here to tell you, you will be able to understand her better than me. She has a much better mastery of the language than I do. I think she's had to practice. So anyway, thank you both for being here. And I want to chat a little bit with you, Liz, about, you shared with me how you found the Shear domestic violence training, but what really, when you saw it, made you think this has to, go further than, the 50 states. We have to take it in a broader reach.
I suppose there were several elements to it. One was, this time last year when we were in our first lockdown, I saw so many salon owners posting about domestic violence on social media. So for the first time ever, I was noticing people putting up posts advising their customers, if you need to talk, just call me. If you need me to call the authorities, ask for eyeshadow number such and such. And that really sort of piqued my attention that that there's something happening here, that we as people in the salon industry have a responsibility to our clients, and if they are in danger, then we provide a safe haven for them, really, in the normal course of events. And I don't think I'd really thought about it too much, but I thought, oh my, then I really thought, well, these people now, have no lifeline if going to the salon was their escape and was their lifeline. So that was sort of in the back of my mind since this time last year. And then in February one night, I was just at home and I was just going through my LinkedIn, and I just by random coincidence just found the link. And I decided to do the training there and then. And there is a personal aspect to it, insofar as, I was that person many years ago who had to literally run for my life and go into hiding. And even though it's several years ago, it brought me right back to it. And I thought the training was invaluable. It didn't take me long to do it, but it was really helpful, because I thought, all the places that you look for help, but nobody really understands. And I thought the training was really correct. It was concise, and it was just like, this is how you help somebody in this position, and also the link to the YWCA. So I felt it was really comprehensive. And I thought, when I was in that position, if I'd had that help, it's absolutely priceless. So I did the training, and I thought, this is just so useful. And then I thought, well, I have, a long-standing history in the background in the industry. I have quite a large database. And I just think, Liz, you have a responsibility. Everything happens for a reason. So I felt, if there's anything that I can do to teach people, or to bring this training to other salons and to the wider salon community, then I feel, then I better reach out and get in touch. So that's really how it evolved for me, and and how it came about. But also, I think that night there was maybe nothing on TV or whatever, but I also sat and thought, the work that I do now, I spend a lot of time in and out of salons, and I'm doing this work now since 2006. And there have been several occasions where I have had to point out to business owners, do you mind me just saying, but I've noticed something with that staff member. And because I have personal experience of it, I can put my finger on, I know what's wrong. I've also had occasions where I've gone to salons to work, and, to work with the business owner, and we'd have a full agenda for the day. And, something horrendous would have happened the night before, and I've got to get her out of her house. And so, like, it's happened to me so many times in the nature of my work that I just thought, well, okay, with this training, and of course we know over the last 12 months domestic violence has really increased on account of COVID. So I just felt I was being hit from every angle. And I thought, no, it's time now. You have to. This training is so fantastic. It has to. We've got to bring it to a wider audience. And before I'd even contacted Suzanne, I put it out on my database, on my weekly newsletter the following week, and I think several hundred people downloaded it and watched it. So so for all sorts of reasons, I just felt, you've got something that people need to know about here.
So you said that so eloquently, and it was more than a few hundred that downloaded and did. It was several thousand people, based on the information you put out, which tells me that this is really necessary information. It is useful. And one of the things that you said was that, there was information in there, if someone's sitting in my chair, but also what we keep forgetting is sometimes it's the stylist that works in the salon, right? It's that person that sees themselves in the training. And I even venture to guess it could be, as widespread as it is, that sometimes it could be somebody who is a perpetrator of violence who says, you know what, this is me. I'm doing the wrong thing and I need to get help. So Suzanne, having done this now since late October, early November, what's the most common feedback you're getting in terms of questions, or what type of feedback are you getting? What might, we'd be expecting for Liz? What are the things that people are asking about that maybe we need to have a second, version that we follow up on?
Well, thank you, Liz, so much. You really did just say it all. You have so much insight from so many different levels, as a survivor, as an educator, as a friend and coworker of so many people in this industry. I will say that I've been really overwhelmed by how many people have seen themselves or seen someone very close to them in this training and just didn't recognize it. There's a lot of people that I think once they have the tools, it's a light bulb. They're like, oh, I've seen this so many times, and I just didn't know that was what I was seeing. So I'm really excited that we've been able to get this information that'll hopefully save lives in the hands of people that might themselves need it. I think that really going into more depth about, there's something called the power and control wheel that we often use in our trainings. And it's a very concise, detailed map of exactly what each of the signs looks like and how to recognize each sign. And I think that a part 2 could even delve a little bit more in depth into that wheel and just what that looks like on a practical basis. It's too detailed to go into right now as we speak, but that's something that I think could be a helpful part 2. And just really emphasizing that it often takes up to 7 times for someone to actually leave. And so really having grace and patience for people that are in that situation, that, it can be frustrating as someone that cares about someone, seeing them maybe make the choice to stay, and just really understanding how complex and how different each situation is, and how there's not really a one-size-fits-all piece of advice for someone. And what we do is just put the resources in people's hands to call that number or text that number, or reach out to an expert that can look at their individual situation and say, this is how I would advise you, or this is how I would advise you as someone who cares about your client or your coworker or a loved one.
I think it's so great that we're having this conversation, because we talked about it, the three of us, when we were preparing for this call, about the fact that for me, it's kind of an awkward conversation because it's not something that's been in my life, right? Like, I'm not sure that I don't want to offend somebody by making an assumption that that's what's going on, type of a thing. But I love that the training makes me feel more comfortable with what can I say in this sort of awkward situation for me? Certainly, I mean, unfortunately for both of you, you can say, I understand. Like, I understand how you feel. I can't really say that, right? So I have to find a different way of speaking. And I think it's great that we're pushing this out to such a large volume of people, because certainly people like me that feel a little bit turned around in this conversation, a little bit awkward, can get a better sense of what to say and feel comfortable. So for those of you who haven't gone and done the Shear Haven training, it is available and it is helpful for what to notice. You brought up something interesting. I think it's kind of great that we have these two things going on. Liz brought up the eyeshadow, calling and saying, I need eyeshadow number, whatever. I think in the United States, we talked about it's calling for pizza. Like, you can call the police and tell them you want to order pizza, and the police, because then you would be giving your address. You'd be saying, yes, this is the address I'm at, so the police can come. But it's interesting, all of these sort of insider tools that people have developed to help other people. And I love that. Liz, tell me a little bit about the eyeshadow one. I want to hear how that works. And what is it? If someone's listening today, what is it?
It's pretty much the same as your pizza call. Like, just let me know what eyeshadow you need, and I'll drop it around to your house, so that that way they have the address and they have the phone number. Yeah, and it's just not an unusual thing to be heard chatting to your therapist or your stylist about at night time, just ringing you up to say, I love that blue eyeshadow number, such and such. Could you drop it around to my house? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we talked about in preparing for this was little things. Like, if let's say someone's watching this and doesn't really ever get to go and do the Shear Haven thing, are there just a few tidbits if they can't go do the whole education, or they just don't feel like it applies to them? You mentioned something about that whole control piece where, somebody shows up, let's say, as I recall it, and they always have their partner with them, always waiting, like never letting them, like, this might be the only time they're away from them outside of the house. What are some of those other things that somebody might look for, or might be a key, like a trigger for them to think, oh, something's maybe not right here? Either one of you, whoever wants to talk.
That's definitely one. What would you say, Liz?
Yes, and this is why I think the training is so important, because I've had experience of it when I've been in salons and working away with the owner in the office or whatever, and seeing somebody outside the whole time, and seeing the employee going out at lunchtime. And I can remember one situation where the third day in a row where I saw this, I then had to explain to the owner what's actually happening here. Now, if that owner had access to your training, then it wouldn't take, just me randomly turning up to make it obvious what was going on. So I think it's very, very useful that if you've done training and you can see that happening, well then you know what you're dealing with. Whereas it was just, oh yeah, so-and-so's husband is crazy about her. He's there every single day with her lunch. And after about day 3, I had to, take the owner aside and say, well, I have to explain to you what's happening here. It's not, what you think it is, and it's not what it looks like. And the shock that brought, and and then you're sort of saying, but was that not obvious? And then I stop and say to myself, of course it's not obvious, because this doesn't happen to everyone. It's only obvious to you because you were that person. So that's definitely one.
That was kind of where I was at. Like, to me, it might not be obvious. And the statistics that you present about how many people are in those types of relationships, I should know. I'm sure I know people, and I'm a nurse, so you would think that they would trust me or say something to me. And I racked my brain when I was doing the training thinking, who do I know? Like, but there is one person in my life, not really in my life anymore, but one person in my life who I felt like, oh, that fits that unusual behavior. That fits the way that person was. And unfortunately, they're not enough in my life that I could call them today and go, hey, can I help? It's not that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this training that also brings home a point. Look, you're a stylist, you're in a salon, you're seeing all kinds of people all day, every day, but you also have a personal life. You also have people, that you're going to meet every day, your friends, that type of thing. And it was really helpful for me to watch that and think this looks, it can come across as very loving and attentive when in reality it's really controlling. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what is a little bit, terrifying about it. So Suzanne, you've been doing this for actively about 4 years now with the Shear Haven training. And I'm sure you've gotten some feedback from some people that you've really changed the course of their life, correct?
Yes.
Yep. And then also some people who, as you said, don't want to change, right? Have to sort of stay stuck. How do you deal with that? Like what you mentioned it earlier, how do you move past somebody who isn't ready to leave and maybe gets really, really hurt, maybe even gets killed after you've known and you've had that conversation? I mean, I know that happens every day, not every day, but it's more common than we would like, put it that way.
I think just, as I said, holding that open space for someone, just having the peace of knowing I open the door to be a support. I planted a seed. Maybe it might be a tiny little seed of, I could be totally wrong, but this is kind of what I see or how it feels, or these are the resources that there are. And just so you know, I'm here. It might take someone years. They might financially not be able to get away. They might, really have the hope that something is going to change. You might see little glimpses because it is a cycle. You'll see the explosion or the event that is the abuse, but then it circles back into a really peaceful time and a hopeful time. Even if it could be a few minutes, or it could be a few days, it could be a month, where they give you hope that something might shift back to kind of what that honeymoon was. And so really giving people the space to know that you're just there and that there is help out there. And I've had definite feedback from stylists, especially. There was an event here in Tennessee that happened shortly after starting this initiative. And one of my friends reached out and said, I lost a client. And she said, in hindsight, there were definite signs, but she said, because she was such a lovely, positive, seemingly happy person when she came in, she kept such a brave face. She assumed that, kind of what she was seeing was the story. And she said, looking back, I know that he would take her to every appointment. He would, kind of control how she had a lot of anxiety about how she was going to pay for it or how much money she was spending. He had a lot of input about what she looked like. And at first she thought, well, they're new to town. And so she's not familiar with the area. And so that's why he's taking her to her appointments, or they're sharing a car. And then looking back, she was like, no, that was his way of making sure that he knew where she was at all times. And I think that this training, this information would have been helpful. I don't know that it would have necessarily saved her life, but I think at least would have given her a clearer vision of exactly what was going on. And so I think that just being patient and being a safe space is the biggest thing.
So Liz, do you think that social media has made this problem better in some ways? Because one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching the training is that, my age group, I remember before social media, and that things like this could be really normalized, right? If your mother experienced, like if it was in your household and then you experienced it, you just thought that was normal, right? Because that's what you had seen growing up. But do you think that social media has had the ability to make people, is it made it better or worse? Because in my mind, I think it could have made it better because you have a different vision to what love might really be like, and that what you're experiencing might not be that, or it may also give you an anonymous way to figure out whether what you're experiencing is, normal or not. Because my impression is a lot of times women in these situations actually think this is kind of normal, right? They don't see it as abnormal as, everybody else does. Because tell me what your thoughts are on, how we can help people either with social media or through this training to recognize, to denormalize some of this for people. If I didn't ask you too long of a question.
I'm not sure that social media is that helpful, because my overall opinion about social media is, and I watch, my own news feed quite a lot, and I see salon owners and everything, and it looks like life is wonderful, and then I go to their businesses and they're not. So I think there's a habit with social media that everybody puts out, that everything is wonderful. So I think people having a lifeline, if you need help, contact me, I think is really useful. But in terms of, I think if I look back, I would think it would have made me feel worse, because I would have thought everybody else is really having a great time. And here am I trying to figure this very peculiar behavior out. So I don't see social media as being that helpful in this. I don't know how in sort of, in highlighting this. But if I go back to the salons, I think for people in salons to understand that for clients who are in this position, you could possibly be their only lifeline, which brings a huge responsibility. And as Suzanne is saying, you can only point people in the right direction. The outcome, we don't have any control over the outcome. But I think part of this power and control pattern is that, you wouldn't dare mention anything to your family. You wouldn't dare mention anything to your friends, because you just wouldn't, for all sorts of reasons. And therefore the salon, might be just the only place where you feel safe. And that's where I think the training is invaluable, because if that's the only place I feel safe, then it's really important that whoever I feel safe with knows the right thing to say or not to say, and has a phone number or a contact detail. And like Suzanne was saying, just give me the information, and when I'm ready, I'll do it or not. But it might just take away that, sense of that, there is nobody in the world to help me, and I just have to live like this forevermore.
So we are, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think the training gives people the input about what not to say,
right,
not just what to say.
Right.
Knowing that some advice that might be applicable to a normal relationship could actually be very harmful to an abusive relationship. Group therapy or couples therapy is actually not a helpful route to go if you're in an abusive relationship. But individual therapy could be life-changing. And
Right.
so knowing that you can't just give the blanket advice that you would normally give to a normal relationship necessarily.
We're doing next week, we are participating in a national town hall here in the United States that is being sponsored by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And the whole concept of this town hall is to sort of lift up cosmetologists and barbers and remind them of the power they have behind the chair, like how really powerful that relationship is. If I trust you with how I look, or trust you with that amount of money, all of that time that I sit in your chair, whether it's, 1 hour every month or every week, whatever that is, whether I'm going to a barber or a cosmetologist or someone to do my nails, that time I spend with you over, it develops a trusting relationship. And the power of that, one of our guests is going to be Michelle Obama and her stylist. And the reason that we picked them is she's such a public figure that she has to trust that person, right? She has to be able to trust that they're going to make her look a certain way, but there also has to be this trust that you develop, and it also develops into these conversations you might not have with anyone else. To Liz's point, you're standing right here, you're right next to me. I can whisper basically things to you and you can hear me. And so, we're taking it in this call next week around the healthcare of yourself, your client, and your community. But what you guys are talking about is sort of the mental health piece of it, which is what we're wanting to do next, which is to have another call which says you can impact somebody's situation, their social situation, their mental health, their living scenario, that kind of thing. And I just love that. I think such a horrible thing like COVID made us all start talking about that, right? We all started recognizing our responsibility to care about other people in a very personal way. And who better suited than, you know, their beauty experts, right? Their stylists, their barbers, the people that are with them all the time. So I just love that this conversation has now gone around the world, that hopefully we'll be asked to do this in different languages just because of that. And I do think that a volume 2 is kind of necessary. We've gotten a lot of questions out of volume 1, and maybe volume 2 answer some of those questions that did not get answered in volume 1. One last question I have for you, Liz, and then I'll let you guys both say if you have something else you want to say. How is the support and the resources, how are they different in Europe, for example, than the US, if they are at all? Is there some, you know, I know what it's like here, but what is it like there? Are there more resources, less resources? What's your perception?
My perception, and it could be incorrect at this point, is that the resources are limited.
Okay. Because it's not widely accepted that it happens, or just because, do you know why? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think in Ireland there's always, when you made your bed, you can lie in it. So I mean, I think that was the historic thing for so long, and it's just not top of the spend, is it? And so from a practical perspective, we have to help with the resources as well.
Yeah, I think we see that in the United States too. A lot of that, you know, well, this is what you chose, you know, this is the life you chose. There's also seems to be an intersection between religion and this, you know, that's part, you know, there are arguments made for that is how a marriage is supposed to be, you know, that you are subservient kind of a thing in some religious conversations. So I'm just glad we're having the conversation in general. So Suzanne, do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
I'm just so grateful for you, Liz. I think that, you know, Leslie knows how grateful I am for Barbicide, and just this relationship has been an incredible tool to get this message out to the world. But your heart around this topic and your passion around being able to really get this message and this education out to as many people as we can means the world. So I look forward to deeper and more conversations around this.
Yeah.
And Liz, when you finish up, I want to hear your last thoughts, but also I want you to tell us how people can reach your website, because I know you have a link to the training, but go ahead and finish up with your thoughts.
I suppose my final thoughts would be back to the industry and the timing. I think one of the great things for me in COVID, or coming out of COVID towards the end of last year, was where our industry has been totally pivoted and is just now recognized as, you know, one of the most important industries for people in the world. You know, every survey that was done, you know, what's the thing, the number one thing, it was always, I have to get my hair done. This is what people, you know, wanted the most. So it was great for me last year when people say, you know, Liz, I'm never going to think of myself now as I'm only a hairdresser anymore. So I've years trying to tell you that. So now that people accept now how important they are in their clients' lives, I think this you know, if we can combine it with this training, that for people to understand, yeah, they can help a lot more than just cutting people's hair or doing their nails or whatever it is. So exactly what you were saying, how important and how well positioned people are to help now, and the fact that people understand and accept that they're so much more than just a hairdresser. So for me, that's really important. Yes, certainly very happy to put the details on my website. So the website is just my name. It's Liz McKeon, LizMcKeon.com. So if you come onto my website, the link to the training will be there.
Okay, and it will also be on all the information we put out for this actual interview, all of your links to everything. And again, a link back to Barbicide if somebody wants to go do it there. You know, one last thing I want to say is I just was thinking when you were talking about how people say I'm just a hairstylist, I just do this, sort of like it's a second-rate decision in life, which I absolutely disagree with. I mean, if I have to go feel confident about myself every day, it's because a stylist made me feel confident about myself. But I started thinking about the other thing that we've seen in this pandemic is that children who were from homes where they were, maybe malnourished or abused, teachers were their lifeline, and if you can make that connection in your own head about the connection between a teacher and child abuse, or even a school and hot meals for a kid who maybe didn't get hardly any hot meals at home, it's that same connection. It's that same place where somebody can feel safe and have a conversation. And if it is in a place of beauty, all the better, right? Beautiful inside, beautiful outside, right? So thank you guys so much. And I really look forward to posting this. I look forward to maybe doing a volume 2. Wouldn't take much, I don't think, to get it together. And to all of you out there listening to this, if you have questions that were not answered in the training that you think we can answer in a follow-up training, please post them to our social media or to our website so that we can make sure that volume 2 answers all the questions that maybe we missed in volume 1. So thank you, everybody.